So you mentioned also, Neville, earlier that your customers now want, instead of long reports, I think what you called actionable insights or something like that. A related question for all of you: how important is visualization of data and of analysis to what you do, and who are you needing to visualize, and how do you do it? Go for it.
I can start. So with what we do with our data in Freescale, all of it is about presentation. So if we're building a dashboard for an engineer to look at, or a group of engineers, if we're coming up with a correlation that we need to go get capital funding for to make a change to a tool, none of the statistics that we ever run in the background are at all useful if we can't, unfortunately, put it in a PowerPoint presentation and have somebody understand what we meant. And so the way that we present that through different charts, through simplistic visualizations of I've got one distribution here and one distribution here, and I can draw a little confidence interval around it, and no matter who I'm presenting it to, they can tell that those are different, and then I can work that through to tell a story. Incredibly useful. And then on the automated systems where you don't have someone to tell a story, being able to look at a chart and understand what it means, which I think probably a lot of us are going to say that, is really the only way that you're going to communicate the results of what you've done. So, if you look at Tufty is a fantastic example of how you put little spark lines on a chart and you get so much information, but you can just glance at it and you know that these things are going up and these things are going down, and you can use emotional colors. Emotional colors was one of the first things that I ran into in trying to develop visualizations as an engineer so long ago. People like green and people don't like red. And if you happen to put the things that are good with a red or an orange background on them, that doesn't go over so well, right? And something that is bad with a blue background on it, blue is a very non-emotional color. And so just the point of knowing the emotion behind what you're displaying is going to produce helps you to get that message across.
One thing we did specifically around visualization is we built a tool that our customers could use to look at the data. It's interesting, we actually built it for marketing people to be able to look at. So as you can imagine now, it's not a bunch of statisticians at the customer that are going to be looking at it. How does a marketing lead come in and find out where their products are trending, what's going on, and then take that data elsewhere in the organization? So a lot around visualization, a lot of drag and drop, a lot of things that they can go in and touch. Some of the other things we built is just notifications in there. The senior executives don't want to go look at a tool. They often don't want reports. They want a notification when something got out of bounds. And so being able to recognize things behind the scenes, send the notification when something got out of bounds, and either a suggestion of what to do about it or tell them what's being done about it. And so those were areas that we're trying to take some of this data from the back end. Obviously, there's a lot of reporting and a lot of stuff we do on our own and bring to the customers, but also trying to put more and more stuff in their hands so that they can go and get it, but in a digestible format. If you give them something that always goes straight to their statisticians, the business people don't see it for a long period of time. So looking to put tools into the hands of the customers that are actually usable by business users, but have the real data in it.
I think for us, most of the visualization is internal for people within the firm. We don't need to communicate to customers or anything like that. So that's a nice thing. So a lot of our tools are very raw, but we do really value the information that's there. So we spend a lot of time thinking about the types of tools that are important. If you're doing a research test, looking at a huge amount of data, people assume you just look at all the data, but there's just so much data you can't do that. And just another funny regulator story is that I was, in talking to some regulators in Europe, and they were said, well, how are we supposed to bring an enforcement action against someone if someone does something weird? Because there's just so much data. We'd have to look at every single little trade that ever went, And my suggestion was, well, maybe you should get a computer, because computers are actually very, very good at this. And, it's very easy on a computer to show a line that's a normal line and to, understand normal, and then to actually see if something's gone out of that bound. It's, important to define your queries in a reasonable way. One discipline that we started using, which comes from an engineering background, is statistical process control, which I'm sure some of these folks are familiar with also, and I won't go into a long description of what that is today. But basically, what that allows you to do is be very rigorous in deciding whether something's normal or outside of normal bounds, and then it gives you sort of there's something called an out-of-control action plan that you do. If something goes out of a bound, you know immediately what to do. And so we really have introduced a lot of concepts from that discipline into the operations around our business and built alerting in other processes to sort of bring those types of incidents to people's attention.
So
Can I
how-
just,
Oh, yeah,
can I
go
just,
ahead.
oh, I'm sorry, do you want
I
to?
was just going to ask Richard a follow-up question, but so how did your organization first become aware of statistical process control and start integrating it into your activities?
You know, like anything else, by accident, you know, really. I think, you know, generally, we, you know, hire sort of smart, creative people from very different backgrounds. And one day someone was, you know, thinking about the problem and said, hey, this is a lot like the manufacturing problem that people have on an assembly line when they want to make sure that everything is working as expected. You know, and we went out and we interviewed a guy who knew something about statistical process control. And the more we sat down and talked about it, it really mapped very well to the problems that we were having. We hired him for sort of a trial basis. And after, you know, I think 6 weeks of the, you know, 6-month plan, we made him a full-time offer and said, you know, this is very helpful. Please come help us out.
Yeah, I just wanted to share the importance of a trend line. We had a customer that was very upset because they weren't seeing the energy efficiency they thought they were going to see, and they still thought their bills were really high. And so there were all kinds of bar graphs and line graphs and all kinds of graphs shown, and their usage was still higher than everybody else in the group. And so finally we said, well, let's just put a trend line and see what's happening. And their line went down like this. So even though they were much higher than everybody else, their usage was still going down. And once we showed them that line, they were like, okay, we're fine. And the argument was done. So trend lines are your friend.